In today's lesson, we'll be learning how to find the equation of a line with 2 points. In previous lessons, we learned that a linear relation is really just a pattern, and a pattern can be represented with an equation. These two equations mean exactly the same thing. Rate of change is the same thing as slope, and initial value is the same thing as the y-intercept. Slope describes the steepness of a line. You can find the steepness of a line by drawing a right triangle underneath that line and finding the rise and finding the run. Or you can find the slope if you have 2 points on that line, and you can use the equation y2 subtract y1 over x2 subtract x1. In this table of values, you are only given 2 pieces of information. You are told that when x is 10, y is 70, and when x is 20, y is 40. I need you to use this information to work backwards to find the y-intercept. You could do that by first finding the slope, then using it to work backwards, but there must be a better way. In this graph, you have the same information as the table of values. We are told 2 pieces of information. We are told that when x is 10, y is 70, and when x is 20, y is 40. Using just these 2 points, I want you to work backwards to find the y-intercept. You could do that by first finding the slope, which involves drawing a right triangle from these 2 points. However, there must be a better way, and there is. This way involves using algebra and an equation. Let's begin by writing down the information that was originally given to us. We were told that when x was 10, y is 70, and that when x is 20, y is 40. I can now use these 2 points to find the slope. So I'm going to be replacing some of these variables with their known values. I'm going to be replacing y2 with the number 40. Next, I'm going to be replacing y1 with the number 70. Afterwards, I'm going to be replacing x2 with the number 20. And last, I'm going to be replacing x1 with the number 10. 40 subtract 70 is a little bit difficult. You might need a number line or you can use a calculator. It's going to become negative 30. Now on the bottom, you have 20 subtract 10, and that's going to be equal to 10. Negative 30 over 10 is the same thing as negative 30 divided by 10, which means when you have a negative divided by a positive number, it's going to become negative. Therefore, this answer is going to be negative 3. Therefore, the slope is negative 3. Before we move on, let's see if this slope is reasonable. Remember the graph that we just looked at earlier? If you connect a straight line through these 2 points, it's going to look something like this, which means it's going to have a negative slope. And if you look at our calculations, we did get a negative slope of negative 3. Now that we have our slope of negative 3, we can use it as well as this equation in algebra to work backwards to find the y-intercept. But before we do that, let's begin with the information that was originally given to us. We were told that when x was 10, y was 70, and that when x was 20, y was 40. You can either use your first point or your second point in these calculations. It doesn't matter. You'll get the same answer either way. I'm going to be using our first point. At this point, I'm going to be replacing some of my variables with their known values. Therefore, I'm going to be replacing y with the number 70. Next, I'm going to be replacing m, which is slope, with the number negative 3. Afterwards, I'm going to be replacing x with the number 10. And the plus b stays exactly the same. Now this looks a little bit strange. This looks like negative 310. There is actually a multiplication between these two numbers. I'm going to simplify negative 3 times 10 in my next line of work. The 70 is going to stay the same. Negative 3 times 10 is going to be negative 30, and the plus b stays exactly the same. Now, why is this negative? It is negative because when you have a negative times a positive, that's going to give you a negative number. I now want you to look for like terms. You'll notice that 70 and negative 30 are both like terms. Like terms like to be together, which means you can move the 70 over to be with the negative 30, or you can move the negative 30 over to be with the 70. I'm going to be moving the negative 30 over to be with the 70. Remember, generally speaking, you want to keep numbers and variables on separate sides of the equation. So when I move a term across the equal sign, it is no longer the same, it becomes the opposite. So this negative 30 becomes positive 30 now. Plus b stays the same. However, I'm going to remove the plus sign since that is not necessary. 70 plus 30 is going to give you 100. Therefore, 100 is the y-intercept. Now that I just figured out my y-intercept and I already know my slope, I can represent this situation with an equation. So I'm going to replace b with the number 100, and I already figured out the slope to be negative 3. Therefore, this situation can be represented with the equation y equals negative 3x plus 100. In summary, when given only 2 points, you can still find the equation of the line that passes through these 2 points.